It was supposed to be an ordinary night on the Baltic Sea. The air was cool, the horizon calm, and the water shimmered beneath the pale September moon. From the harbor of Tallinn, the ferry MV Estonia prepared for her overnight journey to Stockholm, a familiar route she had sailed hundreds of times before. Families boarded with laughter. Truck drivers shared cigarettes on the deck, waving goodbye to the lights of the city. Inside, children pressed their faces to the windows as the engines hummed to life. The ship's horn echoed through the night, a low call fading into the distance. On the bridge, the crew exchanged quiet greetings, running final checks. The radar was clear, the wind gentle, nothing out of the ordinary. As the coastline disappeared behind them, the sea opened wide, dark, endless, peaceful. For the 989 souls aboard, it was just another night crossing the Baltic. But within hours, this calm would shatter, and 852 lives would vanish beneath these same waters. The MV Estonia was more than a ferry. She was a symbol of pride and connection for a newly independent nation. Built in 1980, she had carried thousands across the cold waters of the Baltic, linking Estonia and Sweden like a bridge of steel and hope.
Ready the shuttle.
That night she was filled with life. Truckers hauling cargo, businessmen heading home, couples beginning a short holiday. Some found their cabins and settled in, lulled by the rhythm of the engines. Others stayed on deck, watching the fading coastline dissolve into the dark. Below the car deck groaned with weight, dozens of trucks chained tightly to the floor. In the control room, the chief engineer monitored the engines, noting every vibration, every hum. The ship's captain, seasoned and calm, trusted his crew and his vessel. To him, this crossing was routine, a night he had made countless times before. At 9 p.m., the Estonia radioed her departure. Winds at 15 knots, visibility clear, waves just 2 meters high. It was by all accounts a perfect night for sailing. As darkness deepened, the passengers drifted to sleep, unaware that far below the surface the Baltic was already stirring, and soon the sea would reclaim them all. By midnight, the Baltic Sea had changed. Winds that once whispered now roared across the decks, carrying sheets of rain that struck the hull like stones. The Estonia pressed forward through waves that rose higher with every passing minute, 5 meters, then 6. The crew on the bridge tightened their grip on the rails as the vessel began to roll heavily from side to side. In the lower decks, the sound was different. A deep metallic groan echoed through the corridors, the kind of sound that made even seasoned sailors glance upward. Inside the car deck, where rows of trucks were chained in place, water seeped through the ramp seals. Each wave that hit the bow slammed with the force of a hammer, shaking the steel beneath their feet. At 12:15 a.m., passengers began to notice the movement. Doors creaked, glasses slid from tables, the faint sound of unsecured cargo rattled below. Some joked nervously, just another Baltic storm. But the crew knew better. This was no ordinary sea. The first engineer descended to the car deck to check the bow visor, a massive hinged door designed to open for loading vehicles. As he reached the lower corridor, he could hear it, a rhythmic clang, faint at first, then sharper like metal under strain. He called it in to the bridge. The officer on duty listened carefully, then replied, "Keep monitoring, it's probably the wind." Outside, the waves climbed higher still. Spray drenched the windows of the wheelhouse as the radar flickered in and out. Through the darkness, the lights of another ferry flashed briefly in the distance, then vanished into the storm. At 12:30, a sudden bang reverberated through the ship, louder, deeper, unmistakable. Several passengers shot awake, alarmed. In the engine room, the chief engineer froze his eyes, fixed on the pressure gauges that trembled on the wall. The captain, still calm, ordered a minor course correction. No one knew it yet, but somewhere deep within the ship's bow, the locks holding the visor in place had begun to tear apart one by one. The Estonia continued forward, unaware that the sea was already prying open the door that would seal her fate. At 1:00 a.m., the Baltic struck back. A deafening crack split through the hull, a sound no one aboard would ever forget. The massive bow visor weighing several tons tore away from its hinges and slammed into the sea below.
I can't!
In that single moment, the gateway to the car deck was ripped wide open. Seawater rushed in like a living creature, devouring everything in its path. Within seconds, the deck was awash. Trucks shifted, chains snapped, metal screamed. The ship lurched violently to starboard, sending passengers tumbling from their bunks. Cabin lights flickered and died, replaced by the dull red glow of the emergency lamps. Panic spread faster than the flooding. In the dark corridors, people shouted over the roar of rushing water voices colliding, echoing, lost. "Get to the deck," someone screamed. But the deck was already tilting the hallway, now a steep climb of slick steel and chaos. In the control room, alarms blared one after another. Captain barked orders, closed the watertight doors, engaged the bilge pumps. But it was useless. The water was not a leak, it was a wall. It surged through the stairwells, swallowing entire rooms in seconds. On the bridge, the crew fought to maintain control. The radar was gone, the navigation lights dark. The Estonia had lost her balance, and with it her future. Outside, the storm howled louder, masking the cries of the dying ship. At 1:15, the list reached 40 degrees. Nothing could move upright. Passengers clung to railings, praying, sobbing, calling names that vanished into the wind. Some jumped, disappearing into the freezing black water. Others stayed trapped behind sealed doors and overturned furniture. And then, almost mercifully, the noise began to fade. The engine stalled. The power flickered one last time. The Estonia groaned like a wounded giant, her bow plunging deeper into the sea. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop. And then the ocean closed over her, erasing the lights, the sounds, the screams. When dawn broke, the storm had passed, but so had almost everyone aboard the Estonia. The sea was eerily calm, as if nothing had happened. Only the faint hum of rescue helicopters disturbed the stillness. Below them, the surface was littered with fragments of a vanished world. Lifeboats, half-submerged wooden doors, suitcases torn open by the waves. A few survivors floated among the debris, clinging to anything that would hold. Their faces were blue from the cold eyes fixed on nothing. They had endured the unimaginable, the darkness, the noise, the freezing water that stole every breath, every voice. At 5:30 a.m., the first rescue ships arrived. Crews scanned the empty horizon, calling names into the mist that swallowed every answer. What they found were not cries for help, only silence. A silence so deep it felt alive. One survivor later said, "The sea was full of people, but no one was moving." In the distance, the sun began to rise, a weak gray light spreading across the Baltic. The waves rolled gently now, as if cradling what they had taken just hours before. By midday, the rescue count was complete. 137 pulled from the water. 852 never returned. The ocean calm once more gave nothing back. No ship, no sound, no trace of the night before. Only the wind whispered across the surface, and the world for a moment felt smaller, colder, quieter than ever before. In the days that followed, the Baltic was searched again and again. Ships, aircraft, and divers scouring miles of gray sea. What they found was a silent tomb. The Estonia rested 80 meters below the surface, lying on her side as if still fighting the storm that had taken her down. The investigation began almost immediately. Officials concluded that the bow visor had failed. A simple mechanical flaw, they said, magnified by the sea's relentless power. But for many, that answer was never enough. Families demanded truth, not numbers. They wanted to know why the distress call came too late, why the nearby ships never saw the flares, why their loved ones vanished in the dark while the world slept. For months, memorials filled the harbors of Estonia and Sweden. Rows of candles burned along the piers. Photographs lined the walls, faces of mothers, sons, sailors, children. At night, people gathered by the shore, listening to the quiet rhythm of waves, wondering if the sea could hear them call the names it had taken. Some survivors refused to sail again. Others spoke of nightmares that never faded. The sound of rushing water, the ship's final groan, the cold that never left their bones. Years later, monuments were raised along the Baltic coast. Simple stones etched with 852 names. No grand words, no speeches, only silence. Because there are tragedies that words cannot hold. Only memory can. Today, the route between Tallinn and Stockholm remains busy. Ferries come and go, lights reflecting on the same waters. But beneath those waves lies a reminder, a warning written in salt and steel, that even the calmest sea can turn without mercy. And so the Baltic carries her secret still. The ocean forgets nothing. It only keeps what we cannot bear to remember.